Clara Trujillo. I'm a design lead for the Global Designing Cities initiative. We have several programs within our organization, and I'm leading one of the cycling focused one, the BC project. And so I'm super excited to be here today, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about designing streets for people with a focus on cycling. So as you know, and why you are active in this event is that streets are the largest network of continuous space that we have in our cities. And because our cities are already built, they are one of the biggest assets that we have for public space. And so we really have to think about how we approach them, right? Streets are a platform to move, to stroll around, to play, to learn how to cycle, to dine, to spend time with old friends, but also meet new ones. They're also a place to enjoy and engage with nature. But unfortunately, they have been designed with one user in mind, and that is private vehicles. And so that has caused an immense challenge within our urban environments, creating places like this or like this, where people, mostly pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and even people within those private vehicles are suffering from a lot of challenges that are related to this way of approaching our streets. So in our streets, in our cities, we can see scenes like this. And so that is what really is driving our organization, Global Designing Cities Initiative. We were launched in 2014 by Janet Sadiq Khan, who is the former Commissioner Transportation of New York City. And our mission is really to transform streets around the world and inspire leaders, inform practitioners, and invite communities like yourselves in the room to really imagine what's possible when we design streets that put people first. So all of this work is guided in one of our main publications, the Global Street Design Guide. In this guide, we really want to showcase what is possible when we change the measure of success in our streets, going from just thinking about movement and traffic access to include accessibility, safety, and all of the other co-benefits that come with it. And so all of these work has been then translated into multiple publications, some focused on kids, on how to implement street transformations, how to evaluate them, how to engage kids in street design, and one that is very exciting is this upcoming one on designing for safe speeds. And I really encourage you to look it up online. They're all free to download. And in these publications, we want to change and switch this pyramid and put people first. But one of the main focus on our publication is this new approach to street design. And we really want to go away from that functional classification of streets that measures streets in terms of movement, and more embracing this approach of people and place, looking at all of the users, but also thinking about the context itself and all of these other desired outcomes that relate to the environment, the economy, our quality of life, and so on. And so in the guides, you will see a lot of these diagrams where we reimagine what's possible, and we try to put on a new set of glasses and think think about streets that can support more people and how their specific needs are a whole world, both for pedestrians, for cyclists, but it can also be thought about for transit riders and other users. And also streets that can support more functions beyond movement. And so in our work, we've supported more than 60 cities throughout the world. And this year we are turning 10, which is very exciting. And so that's kind of the intro of our work. And today I wanted to focus a little bit on designing streets for cyclists. I know that you're going to be working on that during this hackathon. And so we have, like I said, a program that is focused on cycling, and we have been working with 10 cities for the past 3 years in very specific projects. And something that we like to start our conversations with the city is this view of Portland, because Portland, at the beginning of the 2000s, they had been developing a lot of their network very fast. But what happened is that most of their network was looking like this. And something that was happening to them is that their cycling share was not going up. It was at a standstill. Even if they continued to build, there weren't any more new cyclists using their streets. And so one of their lead engineers, Roger Geller, started to discuss with the team, and they wanted to understand what was happening, what were they doing wrong. And so they did a survey, an intercept survey around the city, not just asking cyclists, but also people that do not cycle, why they weren't using their streets. So through the analysis, they found out that there are 4 types of cyclists in Portland. And in at work at GDCI, we had found that sometimes it's very, very similar across the world. And so they found that 1% of the respondents are cyclists that are strong and fearless. They will cycle no matter what. There were other 7% that were enthused and confident, and those were people that can cycle in the environment that there is right now, but sometimes are more cautious. And there was another 33% that were people that will not cycle no way, no how, even if there's infrastructure. But the very important part is the 60% of people that are interested but concerned. They're not cycling right now, but they would if the environment was conducive to them. So the team in Portland went a little bit deeper and found out that 81% of people, of this subset of people, would cycle if they had a protected cycle lane. And so it's quite groundbreaking for the team. And so from there, Portland started to reevaluate how they were designing their infrastructure so they could really tackle or attract those 60% of users that were not cycling but were interested. And so thinking about Belfast, I did a little bit of looking on Google. I think this might be different for Belfast. I found the model share for Northern Ireland, and I see that you have 1% of cycling share, and we really want to stretch these sustainable modes to start gaining that share that right now the motor vehicles and motorists have in the model share. But to do that, and this is something that we have really reiterated throughout this year working with cities, is we really need to redefine who we are designing and planning for. And so, yes, we can think about this user that is strong and fearless, but we also need to think about these other users that have very diverse needs. They do very diverse activities. They have different social needs around the city, and they also ride at different speeds. And they have different types of vehicles, right? So what we want to see in the streets of Belfast is these types of users. So kids, families, but also infrastructure that supports other types of cycling, social riding, and being able to chat, because cycling is not just about movement, but the ride itself, it's kind of half the fun. And so thinking about these users, we have to start creating cycle-friendly networks for people of all ages, abilities, and genders. And what that looks like is cycling networks that accommodate safety, comfort, and connectivity. And this includes a variety of needs. But when we talk about comfort, we really want to create infrastructure and streets that are low stress and that accommodate different types of needs. And so what this looks like is we can have some long range connection that are fully separated and continuous. But in the main streets, we can also include other type of facilities. And then we also have the local streets and residential streets, which I know you're gonna be talking about. They are very important for the network because the users that we have in mind are not going just to work and going back. They are doing multiple little trips within their neighborhoods. So these local streets are very important to supply for that type of user that has chain trips, for example, caregiving trips. And then if we start thinking about all of those local streets and kind of these polygons that are created by the main streets, we can have area-wide approaches where we think about cycle streets, model filters, etc., without forgetting about all of the intersections. That is something that cities tend to forget. So it is very, very important to never forget about the intersections. And in our guidance, we have kind of a comprehensive toolbox of all of the strategies that we can use when we are designing streets. And what this can look like is sometimes bringing back that people and place approach. Not all streets are the same, and we don't use one design solution for every street in the network. So in this case, we have a one-way cycle street, we have a bidirectional cycle track, but also these other local streets that really improve the network. So we are combining safe facilities, managing speed, volumes, and access with raised intersections, cycle cut-throughs, and other strategies like creating chicanes and so on. And again, never forgetting about the intersection. And so just thinking about these diagrams and going back to what the cities are doing, I wanted to bring some inspiration for the work that you're going to be doing today. This is a mix of projects from GDCI and other projects that the cities that we've worked on or that are part of our network are doing at the moment. So I know that the hackathon is quite short, but I really encourage you to look at our publications. We have these type of pages where we have examples for different types of streets, but also accompanied by case studies and thinking about how they can be reconfigured to fit different needs. So I'm gonna do like kind of like a click through of cycle facilities that we've found throughout the work that we find that it's very interesting, and they go beyond the Copenhagen's. Well, you'll see some from Copenhagen, but they go beyond the natural cycle superstars that we usually hear about. So in these examples, there are many cities that are exploring the protection elements on the main street. This is in Guadalajara, Mexico, or right-sizing travel lanes. It's not reducing, it's right-sizing them and finding the space for cyclists within our streets. This is in Bogota, Colombia. Another example from Brazil of reallocating that space, especially in front of schools, offering adequate protection and also dimensions for those types of users and vehicles that we were seeing, this case in Milan, in Italy, or in Fortaleza, Brazil, or even improving the interaction with transit riders. In this case, in Wellington, New Zealand, they have now rethought these elements and now are building it in concrete after talking with the low vision community. And other ideas about rethinking parking and curbside management so that the parking lanes, which are taking so much space in our cities, can become kind of a flex zone that can accommodate uses for other users, like people doing business, green infrastructure, and so on. So this is the typical example from Copenhagen, but there are many other cities that are now rethinking parking. Again, in this example, they haven't reduced that much parking, but in this case now, parking is serving a purpose for the cycle track, and it's protecting, right? This case from New York, from Berlin. Other cities are, again, rethinking about the dimensions and how comfortable they are for the users. So this case in Portland, but this one in Fortaleza, where we worked with the city to recover a lot of the space that was allocated for private vehicles. And improving the safety and comfort for the smallest cyclists so that they can have more independence. Another thing that cities are really striving to do is adding green infrastructure to improve thermal comfort. This case in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, which is also part of the 10 cities that we're supporting. This one in Sydney, again, incorporating trees and nature so that the trip itself is attractive and comfortable. This other case in Montreal, Canada, where again they are adding trees and vegetation, but also thinking about how the cycle facility can improve also the comfort and safety of pedestrians. In this case, reducing the crossing distance for pedestrians mid-block. This is also an example in Brazil of doing the same thing. And in Tirana, we're currently working with them in this project of focusing solely on intersections, because as you can see, they're currently giving up at the intersection. So this is the project, this is ongoing. It's under construction right now, but we're very excited to see it in the coming months. But also other cities that are reimagining the street typologies. In this case, in Bogota, it doesn't have to be the same protection and continuing with the travel lanes and so on. In this case, they are creating a bidirectional facility, but also reducing the speeds of the travel lanes, so it's easier for pedestrians to cross from one side to the other. This other example in Fortaleza of cycle priority streets, or this case in Lisbon, who we are supporting also in slowly prioritizing pedestrians and cyclists and transit in the city center. This used to be like one main street for private vehicles, and now it's open for transit and cyclists. Or this other example in Paris, who is like the huge superstar at the moment. I think this is very important, is after they've built their main corridors, it's again really important to think about those local streets because they are an essential part of the network. And in Paris, they created this law, this policy that now allows contraflow in every street for cyclists. So it's really increasing the permeability and accessibility of the network with these more quiet streets, which we can also see in these open school streets for pedestrians and cyclists, and all of the students that are also little bits that keep adding to the network. Same with these examples from a project we did in Solo, Indonesia, where school streets really start adding to that cycle network. It doesn't have to be that cycling is the main focus, but how can every project contribute bit by bit to the cycle network? You have some examples in London as well about filtering motorists to prioritize active modes, and creating cycle streets when reducing speed, volume, and access. But also like these examples from also Fortaleza of reclaiming space for public space and active modes. I think these little bits start contributing to the cycle network, even if it's not necessarily a cycle protected facility, and how we can go from interim to capital construction slowly. These other examples from Bogota, who we worked in a while back, we're still working with them, but reimagining how a roundabout can be a place for public space and active modes. So this was the interim, and this was the after engaging with the community. Or removing carts from the heart of the neighborhood, like Barcelona. I know I brought a lot of examples now. I'm thinking about it. This one from Milan, who we worked with in this Piazza Aperte program. And I think that these plazas really work as model filters to expand the network and easy access to cyclists, and create space for new users to learn how to ride. Other examples from Copenhagen about those model filters. And I'm almost done, but I wanted to say that supporting cycling uptake takes policy, programs, educational programs, and so on. But something that we've seen in BC in these few years of working with them, with the 10 cities, is that community engagement is key. Also thinking about cycling programs that can then turn into projects or vice versa, and like the importance of collecting metrics and evaluating the projects so that we know what works and what doesn't, and so many other strategies to really support cycling uptake in our city. So for example, in Bogota, a project about cycling to school, a program, has now turned into a program that is driving cycling network expansion around those routes that the kids do with the cycling to school program. In Fortaleza, the designing team is doing these pedal talks where they sit in one of the key corridors and interview the people that are using the infrastructure to understand what should be better. Or in Tirana, they've created the youth cycling ambassadors, and other strategies like testing designs and new approaches, like in Quelimane, Mozambique. And yeah, just like also doing what you're doing right now, building local capacity and engaging in participatory spaces is very important. And yeah, I think just wanted to end saying that just to shape the next generation of cycling facilities and in other parts of Northern Ireland and beyond, I think it's very important that you bring your bold visions, your expertise, your diverse experiences, and your local action to really continue this cycling revolution. So yeah, that was it. I hope that I stayed on time, but if you have any questions, let me know. I also had this little thing that I think would be helpful. You can do it if you want. but because I imagine you're gonna be in groups, I think something that has helped us with busy cities is thinking, what type of cyclist am I? And see how I can change my mindset and put myself in another type of user. So yeah, maybe if you want, I can leave this mentee to see what type of cyclists we have in the room.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think a round of applause after a wonderful presentation. And you can very much, we can leave that slide. Oh, disappeared there. Any questions from the room? You know, I felt treated by the amount of projects and the opportunities, looking at maybe Belfast being some of the before pictures more so than the after in many cases as well. Any questions from the room about a really rich presentation, or shall I abuse my position? Dermot, I maybe convey the question if it's not picked up. Did you hear the question? Or basically lots of wonderful examples. What would have maybe united them? Quite diverse approaches, but are there any things that maybe were common threads in the good practices we've seen from pretty much all of the continents?
Yeah, I think I really wanted to show what happens when you put the user first, and like trying to think about who we want to attract, not designing for the people that are already cycling, but like all the new users. So I think that's a common thread. And another common thread is that if you want to create like these huge steps forward, you do need political leadership and like political support to drive that. And sometimes that is not happening. So the advocacy side also can be super important to keep the leadership accountable. I know that it's not easy and it takes a toll on people, because you're like constantly trying to advocate for better cycling. But what I've seen in many of these cities is that they have a very strong advocacy groups, and that can then lead leadership to making these decisions. I don't know if that helped, but I think what I'm seeing in very successful cities right now is that they are protecting and thinking about the network as a whole instead of just individual approaches.
Yeah, that was a very clear answer. Any other questions from the room? If not, maybe I'll ask a quick one. Apologies, Anne. My question would be, quite often whenever it comes to progressive changes to street design, my 7-year-old had a question there as well, which I'm not sure about. We'll ask him after maybe. Whenever it comes to making changes to street networks, quite often there's sort of fear amongst business associations about, impacts on trade. In relation to the many projects, is there data, is there much data in terms of the impact that the pedestrianisation or the active travel schemes have had on the business community?
So this is something that many of the cities are coming with. For example, when you talk about removing parking, many of the businesses start complaining because it relates to, the people that are buying in my shop are coming by car, so I need to supply parking so that they can stay here. So that is something that I wanted to say with relation to the how to evaluate street transformations. We have a publication based on that. It's very important to monitor the before and after of a street. So when you are engaging with the community and the business owners, you have data from other projects that can support it. So you're not like starting from scratch every time. I think, Neil, I can share some examples afterwards and I can send it to you. There are a lot of examples from New York. They did a lot of these I think Toronto is very diligent about metrics collection and project evaluation. But it's not the case in many of the cities that we work in right now, because they have very small budgets, they have very small teams. So right now we're kind of, encouraging them to really measure the street and evaluate the project, so that you're not starting from scratch the conversation every time you start a project.
Thank you very much, Maria. And you had a question, I think.
Infrastructure doesn't quite controversial.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if you heard the question, but I think Anne was talking about the slide of, it might have been Wellington in New Zealand, where they'd included tactile paving, and it looked at the issue to do with cycle infrastructure and visual impairment. I think it was New Zealand. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the question is specifically about what?
It's about how to integrate facilities for people with visual impairment in active travel corridors, because quite often locally there would be a lot of issues from charities that would, I suppose, advocate for people with visual impairment and the conflict that there is potentially with cyclists.
Yeah, I think this is very tricky, because there isn't kind of a universal policy on how to put the tactile and where to place it and how wide it is. It is very localized. But I think what Wellington did and what we encourage other cities to do is, like, in the community engagement process, be very mindful of the people that are included and who is missing in that space. And in the case of Wellington, they bought this very expensive platform here. It's from a provider that it's from Spain, so they even had to import it. And so it's coming from a totally different context, right? And they put it here, and then they reached out to the people with low vision, and people, those very organized groups started to give input into the process. So this solution is no longer being included as is. They have made some small changes that accommodate to the specific policy for accessibility in Wellington and the city. But this has also been an opportunity for the technical team, because this is very expensive to do. So even with that collaboration, they found out that it's actually easier to just build it in asphalt and concrete, and do some small iterations with that community to find the right solutions. But like I said, it's very local knowledge that you have to tap into. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I hadn't noticed when the slide was first up, it's beside the hospital, which probably, increases the significance of access for people with visual impairment. I think there might have been maybe another question at the front table there, possibly. Chris, did you have your hand up? No.
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 Sorry, I was wondering if any of the successful cities have seen any outcomes in terms of health benefits.
Okay.
Also, for example, reductions in air pollution, or also improvements in physical health of the actual population.
Yeah. Did you hear the question, Maria?
Yes.
Good.
So when we talk about collecting metrics and evaluating the projects, there's kind of like a life cycle of that. So you take the before, even during, and after right after, but then you have to take the after many years, because sometimes, you know, at GDCI, we're working with air quality, some projects with air quality, and what we've seen is that street interventions, when they are very localized, it's very difficult to make changes. They have to be like changes at the network level as well. So you can definitely measure the impact immediately, but the results are more long term. So that's why the metrics collection has to be kind of instituted within the team. But yeah, I think that again, like it relates also with the active physical activity, that it's measured more long term, and with these projects we're barely starting. But yeah, I don't know if I
I think you did. I think, you know, because it's the strategic and it's the long term to be able to, you know, show the causative impact of projects. But I think, and it's great to even just look at the resources that have been published, and the fact that they're open access is really helpful, you know, for groups that are looking to go, okay, well, how do we think about making a change, or how do we engage with young people in relation to improving road diet and street diet as well? So there's a wonderful set of resources and a really great presentation. Thank you so much, Maria. Apologies that you're joining online, but hopefully you'll be able to join us in Belfast someday.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I just wanted to add that, just so that if you want to measure, you know, you have to include it in your plan. Otherwise, it would be difficult afterwards, like an afterthought. So it's good that from the start you embed it into your process, these metrics collection and project evaluation, and like what are the metrics that you want to measure in different streets. It doesn't have to be the same measures for every street, but for main corridors it can be air pollution and like noise, etc. And in others it can be the economic benefits, or but it is very important that project evaluation, and it's sometimes an afterthought. But yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to leave you with this. I guess you don't have any no way, no house in the room, which is nice. A lot of strong and fearless. So yes, that's an interesting conversation you'll have today. So
thank you very much, and maybe a second round of applause, well deserved.